And we are live. Hey Samuel.
Hello, Ishan.
By the way, thank you so much for doing this because it's very timely, right? I mean, it's we are late, but it's still. I've seen a lot of companies not move from Google Analytics, even from. I mean, even if they don't have any analytics anymore, almost people still aren't moving, and even if someone has, it's like they haven't really. So it's
Yeah,
still timely. So I really appreciate you doing this. How about this? We'll quickly just introduce. I mean, can you quickly introduce yourself, and then from there, we can just get right into it.
sure. Well, I'm Samuel. I work at Dreamdata as a partner manager. So I work with our agencies and consultancies as well as our tech partners, including LinkedIn and Google.
Mhm.
Um, and I've been working there for 2.5 years. So I feel like I have a good foundation of product knowledge and tracking knowledge. And yeah, like
Yeah.
you said, I mean, I've kind of seen the progress over the past few years where a year ago it was all like, oh, is it going to be banned? And then it actually ended up being banned. And then yeah, what I think a month ago or a couple of weeks ago was when you should have been moved over to GA4.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
thank you for letting me be here as well.
Sorry.
And thank you for letting me be here.
I mean, yeah, the pleasure's ours, right? Just because we have been doing a lot of migrations. So before we get there, right? Like, apart from Dream Data, do you use anything else at Dream Data? I'll start there.
In regards to tracking, or
Just for marketing analytics. Yeah.
well, I mean, we use HubSpot as a CRM. Then we use a lot of different, of course, ad platforms. We run some email automation as
Mhm.
well. Um, we also use some video content editing software quite a lot.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm sure there's a ton of
Yeah. Yeah.
security stuff we're using, but I can't really list them right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason why I was asking, right, is because this is how I was looking at just the basic marketing stack. What
Hmm.
it used to be would be that everyone has a CRM in B2B SaaS, right?
Hmm.
Not that good at any other industry, but I understand B2B SaaS. And B2B SaaS, you would have a CRM, you would have a CMS, a WordPress, Webflow, something,
Hmm.
right? That's those two things every company would have. Then there would be a marketing automation software pretty often, or it may just be a CRM. And then there would be an analytics piece which no one spoke about, but it always used to be your Google Analytics, right? And
Hmm.
that would be your default, the four
Hmm.
marketing pieces stack, right? Now, over time, the CRM space, basically HubSpot and Salesforce, have tried to build everything in themselves. Irrespective of how good those modules are, they have tried to consolidate that.
Hmm.
But I don't think it was ever, even in the CRM, it wasn't that great, uh, the marketing stack. And in Google Analytics, we'll discuss obviously like everything that people faced, but people still used Google Analytics UA,
Hmm.
right? So before you knew Dream Data or any marketing analytics platforms, like what would like how did you work, or how did you look at marketing analytics?
Yeah, so I think you nailed it. I think Google Analytics has been dominant for like the
Mhm.
last decade,
Yeah.
um, if not more. And I think it comes from the very fast B2C adoption of e-commerce booming in the early 2000s, late 2000s, and then kind of B2B just jumping on that because that's all we knew. Um, like there hasn't been such a widespread of like marketing of other tracking tools because Google had monopoly pretty
Yes.
much on that. Um, but yeah, there are a lot of reasons as to why that, in hindsight, was incredibly silly of every B2B to just jump on that blindly. Um, And yeah, I can start diving into that if
Oh yeah, yeah, 100%. I'll just like share. So before I got into Spear
Hmm.
Growth, um, I hadn't seen a marketing analytics software, like a B2B marketing analytics software, right? So, and I think I was pretty happy with the stack I had, right? That okay, if I want to look at website analytics, this is my web analytics software, and then if I need to look at company data or how my deals are progressing, this is my CRM, and I could do most of, like, I could run ads, I could do SEO, so I was able to do these things, and other teams also in the company were able to.
Hmm.
Uh, so where's the handicap in when you see it, right? Like what was what could be different if I have to visualize that between this state and if you had a proper B2B analytics software?
Well, I think just tying it to your point that you had your CRM with deals and you had your tracking, your Google Analytics.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good example of what we found as well. Is if you ask most B2B companies now, how long is your customer journey? They will look into the CRM and they will see, okay, deal was created here and it closed here. It was 60 days or 180 days. But
Yeah.
what we found from our research on all our companies and average customer journey lengths is that often that part of the journey, so from when they are first an opportunity being created in your CRM to when they're closing, there's often, if not more than double the amount of time before they're
Yeah.
even identified. So if you think according to the CRM that is 180 days your
Yeah.
journey, it's probably more likely, double that, almost a year.
We found something, not, I mean, something I guess similar. So this is more niche, right? So we
Mm,
run a lot of demand gen ads for our clients. So whenever we've been running, we always track, okay, we've started running our ads at this point of time, we're nurturing these companies. When can I see pipeline, solid pipeline influence, like significant pipeline influence? And that time, if I have to just take a number for every single company, would like a benchmark, right, would be about 4 months.
mm,
I'm not saying you don't see anything at all before it, but in 4 months, you start seeing enough companies even come inbound and start registering. And that's like a benchmark. Obviously, it goes up, down for different companies, but that's the time. And if I think about it, the average sales cycle would also, in the companies I'm talking about, would be around 4 months, which I
yeah,
hadn't thought of comparing it with.
yeah.
Nice. Okay.
I mean, it's you might not be able to highlight 100%, but if you can highlight 80% of it, it's better than
Yeah.
highlighting 40%, right?
100%. Yes. So, just is back to this, right? So one, okay, I know my marketing. I know the length of the journey of how long does it take, right? Um,
Mhm.
I'll just sort of play the devil's advocate. So what, right? Like,
Of course.
yeah,
Oh,
like
you
what's
do
the,
like, so what? Let you know it.
yeah, I mean, like, great. If I know it, like, how does that even help me at all?
Yeah.
Or if I have a software, like what changes in what I'm doing day to day? Is it what I'm trying to sort of establish it? Is it just a gimmick? And by
Mm.
the way, I love, for anyone watching, I love market. I'm a big promoter of it, but I have to ask these questions. So why? Like, how would you sort of do? Like, what are some actionable things you could do differently now and actually do, not just, oh, I know this, but like what are things that you could actually do differently now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's a lot of layers to it, but if we just focus on like
Mhm.
the longer look back period, right? Of like, okay, so what, I know that it's double the journey. Well, the very first thing is you're actually able to scale the activities that are working in generating that demand. Like, because you might be getting a fair amount of demand and all these opportunities are appearing in your CRM. But if you don't know how you should be scaling that and like accurately with data, then you're kind of just shooting an arrow in the dark. And you're
Mhm.
kind of hoping, oh, let me put 20% more budget into this brand campaign. Let me run some more videos because that seems to be working. And so I think that's, the major thing. And hopefully everyone sees the value in that. Another thing that I think is a huge
Mhm.
value minus when you're using Google Analytics is it's focused on individuals, right? And so, like to put that in example, Ishan, if you are out to buy a piece of software for spear growth, what
Mhm.
Google Analytics thinks everyone is doing is you see Dreamdata and you see we cost 500,000 a year. And you think to yourself, you know what, that Facebook ad, that was pretty persuasive. I'm going to click on it and I'm going to sign the contract for 500,000 a year. And that's it. No one else was involved. That's
Yeah.
what Google Analytics thinks. But I think we all know that very obviously that isn't the case, right? You will need to speak to an engineer who has to implement it. You'll need to speak to the team that has to use it. You'll need to speak to the CEO who has to sign it. And so already there's another huge red flag because Google Analytics will see all these different stakeholders who are actually under the same decision tree and making the
Mhm.
same decision. We'll see them as individuals. And so it'll think, okay, there's 8 different deals coming in now. There's 8 different people that we can sell to coming
Yeah.
in. When in reality, it is one company you're selling to.
Yeah. Okay, so we've already discussed like one, you get better visibility into what's working, and two, you get to
Yeah.
see different people from a company. Uh, and that's fair. Again, still going to continue playing the devil's advocate. I could see what can I not see in a CRM then, right? Because for example, if someone visits the website and the CRM also knows their ICP, so the day they finally fill out the form, you would know who they are.
Yeah.
So I mean, I am getting to see before, or like a lot of the data before they've filled out the form. So I would get to know a sense of, oh, what happened before they filled out the form, even with the CRM. And I'm taking HubSpot because that's the most common one when I'm referencing to CRM. But if you have that information, uh, then again, like, what is it missing?
Yeah, so if you're relying on the CRM like sourcing, so I guess in that case you'd think like the original source field in for example in HubSpot, right? Then you're also putting it in the hands of a human. So if a BDR, for example, calls up a company and books a demo with them, and then they go in and they create an opportunity and they set the original source to being an outbound call. But then you
Mhm.
might also find that that account was actually also had a webinar attendance a month ago. And so here
Mhm.
you have to like choose one. And that's always like it's a big minus having to choose when in reality maybe it was a combination of both. So
Mhm.
there's the human error aspect of it. Then there's another thing of if everything you have in like in your ecosystem in your tech integration is HubSpot. So you have a HubSpot
Yep.
website, you have a HubSpot marketing automation used for CRM.
Mhm.
Then by all means go for it. Then it works very nicely.
Yep.
But as soon as you start like mixing and matching, which most often you will do, in because there's a lot of great tools, um, then suddenly you lose that like vanilla or native integration set,
Yeah.
and you have to start importing data, and there can be a lot of problems with that.
Understood. But I think we're almost at the territory of that. Should you buy, or is it the right time to switch from GA4 to B2B analytics? Just before that,
Hmm.
um, let's sort of take a step back and like so we've discussed a couple of things that GA cannot do. Are there other things that maybe someone should consider or looking at that, hey, why not GA?
Well, um, I mean, I would say the main thing we've kind of covered it, but it doesn't integrate with business results. So it doesn't really provide. What it does provide is it provides information about form submissions from individuals,
Mhm.
but it doesn't give you info about lead generation, opportunity creation, and actually deal being closed or your pipeline. And you need visibility in that
Yeah.
to be able to make really good decisions. I would also say that this 90-day look back period that GA has, and
Yeah,
we mention or actually touch on the problem, but didn't touch on what GA actually
yeah,
looks back 90 days. That's no time in pretty much every B2B SaaS. That is maybe enough to see the lead generation result, but it's definitely not enough to see the full buying cycle.
got it. Awesome. So just maybe going to, so marketing analytics, a B2B marketing analytics software is not for everyone. Right? Like
Mm.
not every company should have it. So
Well,
um,
maybe I would say tracking, yes. I would say every B2B should have tracking. I wouldn't, maybe not having like a reporting or like any kind of data visualization for it, but I think to set up the tracking from when you're one person company will be so beneficial because
mhm.
if you then grow in a year or 2 years and then suddenly you want to be able to use this data to scale, then you have 1 or 2 years worth of data. And it
Yeah,
doesn't, in most cases when you're that small, it won't cost you a dime to start tracking. um yeah, so sorry.
that's a fair point. Yeah, no, that's a fair point. So you're saying that from the day you start, it it is probably a good idea to just start from the get go with a B2B analytics software because it's not going to cost you anything much, and then as you scale, it might start costing you, but then you have the data to actually take decisions from a year back, 2 years back, if
Yeah.
need be.
And also, if you start on Google Analytics and then
Mhm.
3 years down the line you're like, we need to move to a B2B analytics because it doesn't make sense. Well, then you
Yeah,
can wave goodbye to the 3 years you use Google Analytics because they won't give you the data. So you have to start from scratch. And
yeah,
that's, I think that's what scared a lot of people here in the past month, because they realized, they've had a company for 20 years that have been tracking with Google Analytics. So, I'm going to lose all that data.
yeah, yeah. That was unexpected. Like because Google Analytics has been there, and that was the first. I remember I took training. I've trained so many marketers on how to use Google Analytics and which reports are useful. So it was pretty much standard report that everyone uses,
Yeah.
and that's like the industry standard, right? So right now, with if companies start moving away from Google Analytics, because even like how do you define a user, how do you define a visitor, all of that becomes uh, varied. So it just becomes very difficult to understand that if we take stats of two companies, like which one is really doing better. But yeah, so that's, I think there's a lot of reasons why Google Analytics stuck around. It was obviously free, uh,
Yeah.
but what does the question being like, what does the end state look like, right? So we've already discussed a couple of things. One, you can figure out which activities are working. Two, you understand how many people are there in a buying committee, which roles are they from. So maybe you can even sort of tie that into different things. And then
Mm.
you also understand, like, you don't have to get stuck to a marketing source, right? That hey, this was sourced from a single channel, so you actually can do things like demand gen.
Mm.
Those were the three major points that I picked up. Was there anything else?
No, and I mean, maybe that it's GDPR compliant. Now, I guess that's a plus. Oh,
Definitely. I
you
mean,
have to be GDPR compliant.
yeah, and you don't have to deal with the government. I mean, that's a huge big one.
Yeah.
Perfect. Um, so yeah, like when should you move? Like, let's say if you already have it, um, is there any time where the answer is maybe not now, or is it always like you should probably have switched
No, I
20
mean,
years ago, if not, then now?
yeah, well, it's actually a really good question, and like I would still say, what, if you're fine the way you are and you've been fine for 10 years, and you're not looking for that like transparency in scale in your business. Not everyone needs to nerd out so hard about data. Sometimes it does work, and if you're very comfortable in that, then you should just stay there. I would also say, the EU data protection guys aren't going to be after the 1-man, 10-man companies.
Yeah.
They might, and don't take my word for that, but they're going to go after the big corporations, right? That making sure that they actually
Yeah.
have data privacy in order. So to answer your question, it entirely depends, but in some cases, yeah, you can stick on GA, but make sure you get on GA4, and just be aware of the downsides and like the reporting and the tracking capabilities. As long as you're aware of it, then I think you're much better off than everyone else that are using GA.
Got it. And so, if you so basically know what you're missing out on, and if you're completely okay missing out on that,
Yeah.
then switch, and then don't switch. Otherwise, you should probably switch.
Otherwise, you should definitely switch, because like the Chinese proverb is saying, the best time to plant a tree was yesterday, and the second best
Yeah.
time is today. Like in regards to watching your tracking grow.
Yeah. Uh, awesome. So just from a, and again, I'm trying to figure out more from a results perspective, right? Let's
Yeah.
say, do you have any stories to share that, hey, this company was doing X when they didn't have this visibility, and then they could do maybe X plus Y with a little bit more visibility?
I mean, concrete numbers. I could pull out like some huge numbers, but I don't think
Yeah.
it entirely makes sense. What maybe makes more sense is explaining like what is the end game. I think you talked
Yeah.
on that before, right? So
Hmm.
part of it is setting the tracking up, right? That's, I would say, one part of like a house foundation. But then you need to also like you need to add in a lot of things before you can actually get to this end game, which is things
Hmm.
such as like digitalizing all your offline touch points as well. So any sales calls, sales meetings, conferences, having those registered in your CRM or your data
Yeah.
platform, and UTMing everything. So like actually tracking every single possible thing. Shifting from then what actually like shifting from this lead to account based like thinking. So that's a company wide movement, I would say, as well. And then you would actually measure what matters, which is not leads and signups. Of course, they matter, but they don't matter as much as pipeline and revenue generated. Um, so I would say the end game is more like a data driven mentality of the whole organization, and everyone does have to be on the same page. Um, because if you go into your fiscal year meetings as a marketing department, and
Yeah.
you bring up, oh, we got 10 new clients or 10 new signups and 50,000 more views on our YouTube, and then sales come and they say, well, we got this amount of revenue. Obviously the first place they're going to cut budget from is the person who's not bringing in revenue.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I would say the end game is this revenue mentality.
I'll share a story
Yeah.
for this, right? So, supporting this. So, there's this client of ours in the US. We was working on demand gen for them, right? So in demand gen, last trust attribution wasn't really happening. This is like they sell to huge enterprise, like absolutely large. Like they need like a couple of deals a quarter, and they're gold. So selling to
Mm.
the Coca-Colas and of the world essentially, right? So that company. So after we started working with them, we were able to create some reports where we were able to clearly show that, hey, these are the deals that you closed this quarter, and this is the number of people from that company, this is the number of times they clicked, these are the content pieces that they read, and then this got closed. We're not saying this happened only because of marketing or we had any play, but I'm just saying this happened,
Mm.
right? That thing, when that went to the board meeting or to the, just like you said, that made a very big impact on how the company viewed marketing, and you just instantly got more budget for those activities that we were doing. So I mean, yeah, it was like a very big difference the day that report was shown.
Mm.
I think we got a lot more budget the next day or the next sort of month, next for the next quarter,
Mm.
versus they weren't able to get that before. So can
Yeah.
understand.
And I mean, maybe then you also just reminded me. I have an example of our
Mhm.
own data is actually because of our tracking, we can see also content's influence on revenue. So we can see if people have downloaded
Yeah.
ebooks or viewed blog posts. And so what we found from all of our deals that we have closed in all time, 40% actually downloaded our ebook or one of our ebooks, and that's pretty crazy. Like that caught me by surprise in thinking, oh, ebook is just kind of a lead gen, like we just mix something together. But it makes sense that a lot of in these open opportunities, they want to read the content and they at least want to see like, okay, how serious are these guys? So I thought that was a very, very cool stat, and that put in a lot more effort in the next ebook.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I again, this is another story. This is not a story I've told a lot of folks, but uh, I think I did something bad here, right? So this was in a previous company. They had a large team producing ebooks, okay? Like a huge team, and we at that company had maybe hundreds of ebooks, not like a couple of them, like hundreds of ebooks. That was the primary type of content they would create. We would generate leads. Like just ebook downloads was like again in the thousands, right? Like we would
Mm.
get thousands of ebook downloads a month. One day I didn't know better. I downloaded all of this data for the last 2 or 3 quarters, and I just said that okay, there's none of these have really, like in my CRM, I cannot see them, like almost no one moved to an SQL stage out
Mm.
of thousands of ebook downloads. So ebook downloads are a very bad idea,
Mm.
right? And in
Yeah,
my head, I was very proud of this observation.
yeah,
I don't know what that observation would have been if we had the right data points, but I
yeah,
do know we did start producing much fewer ebooks after that.
yeah.
So
And I mean, that might have had an effect on revenue at the end. We don't
it,
know.
it may have had an effect. I don't know, but hey, I didn't have better data, nor did I know better. So
Yeah, that's true. That's
yeah,
fair. Um, Maybe just to also be wary of people's time,
yeah.
should I mention some like the alternatives and
Oh yeah, please do. Yeah.
yeah. So if you want to find these Google Analytics alternatives, you can either stick with it, like we just spoke about. Like if it's
Yeah.
working for you and you really don't want the hassle, but you understand the downsides and you're willing to
Hmm.
take those downsides, then stick with it. Otherwise, you should find the very targeted web analytics provider that meets your specific needs. For example, if you're a mobile app company, find a mobile analytics software. If you're a B2B SaaS, find a B2B analytics software. And if you're B2C, then maybe stick with GA or find another B2C software or analytics.
Hmm.
Then make sure there's this seamless integration with your tech stack, though. Like I think that's a very big point. Is you don't want to have
Yeah.
something where you're locked in. So that's always my like warning. Is yes, you go with HubSpot if you really like HubSpot, but then build your whole ecosystem in HubSpot, and you have to be very sure that that's what you want. Then you should, of course, verify it's GDPR compliant. Um, and I think, and again, I'm not a legal person, but I'm also pretty sure even if you're from the US, you still have to account for if someone from the EU visits you and your website, they have to be on like a GDPR friendly server of your website.
Hmm.
So even if you're in the US and you're trying to sell to the EU, I still think this counts for you. And then I would also check these attribution models that are available in this analytics software,
Hmm.
because once you have this data, you're not just going to let it sit. You want to do some analysis on it. You want to see what's driving my customer journeys. Are there special things that are closing them faster, etc. But yeah, I would say that kind of covers it.
Awesome. So we have a good sort of checklist to go through that. Hey, if this, do this. If not,
Yeah.
then check these things when trying to decide which provider to go with. right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Obviously, Dreamdata is one.
Yeah. I would also say, Dreamdata segment is very good. There's also this Pivot Pro, Drift. But I would Google it and Google after what your specific niche is and have a read. Feel free also to reach out to me if you have questions about Dreamdata, if that's a good fit. Yeah.
Awesome. One thing that I'd love for anyone who watches this to have, right, is you recently you launched this benchmark report, and I remember like you have data on like how large the journeys are for different size of the companies. There are really good benchmarks out of that. Maybe we can share a link to that either in the description, the comments, or
Yeah.
based on where people are watching it. You'll see it down there. So just I would highly recommend looking at it. It's a really good report. Yeah.
Yeah. I've just sent you a link, but I'm not able to
Awesome.
comment.
We'll post it down there.
Perfect.
Yeah. Again, I think we are done. Thank you so much, Samuel, for doing this. I really, really appreciate this.
Likewise. Thank you for letting me join you.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right. Cheerio.